the idea of the device and ultimately how you test devices that it generates a current waveform, which comes out of here. So typically when we test the devices, and I have these cables, we just connect an electric resistor, and we measure the waveform here. Right, so that's something you want to think about, because ultimately for testing the final test, and we can also do that, but the final test is you take some kind of oscilloscope or one of these little tools and you measure the waveform to check that it's the right waveform. So it's a current source, so just operating like that doesn't work because it wants to push a current through, right? So you need a resistor or something that it actually works. Otherwise it will complain and say it's too high of an impedance, because to push a certain amount of current through it needs a certain amount of voltage. So that's actually part of that impedance check feature that you probably have encountered, is that, let's say an electrode were to fall off, then the current has no place to go and it interrupts, since it's like there's an impedance alert and you reconnect it. The device is powered by a 9-volt battery, which is rechargeable. So the way we actually brought this, the way we actually sell is kind of as an entire kit. And it comes with a bank of 9-volt rechargeable lithium batteries and a bay charger. And the operation of the device, the idea is, one, it should be simple, and two, we should be able to hide what we're doing, both to the participant and also the person operating the box. Okay, so you turn it on, it boots up, there's firmware running on here, and if it's slow red blinking, it's ready to connect, and we sell it together with a tablet, usually this or something similar with the app on. And this might not be the latest version of the app they have on here, but there are essentially two ways how to use the device. Let's call it study mode and research mode. Study mode, you can think of like a clinical trial, where you have patients, so no one is allowed to know whether they actually receive stimulation or not. Research mode is, oh, I need to quickly try something, it doesn't matter whether it's double blind or not. So the research mode is here, and the research mode, oh, I guess I need to pair first 15, I guess connect. So the research mode is password locked, a very complicated password right now of 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the device, so it's connected, it's blinking blue now for the Bluetooth link. Whatever the device does, it actually measures the waveform internally, both current and voltage, and puts in an encrypted file. So that's then for later on, we can go and check and see whether the right. This is something you enter, which is essentially just your identifier for what you've done. And now you're getting directly a screen where you can
This identifier you're going to use later for retrieving from the device the data?
It's the data gets streamed in real time, so all the data is on here.
Okay.
There's no data on here. So in research mode, we can manually configure everything we want about stimulation, right? So here, this is not double-blind mode, this is not study, because I know what I'm doing, right? So I can say I want an AC waveform or I want the DC waveform. If it is an AC waveform, I can determine how long. This would be 40 minutes, the amplitude, the frequency, and so on. And if it were DC, obviously there would be no frequency. So here you're setting on the fly, you're configuring the stimulation. Right, and once you know what you want, you're asked to verify with electrodes in the right place, and then you would check the impedance, making sure there's a good connection. Let's see if I can get this done this way. So now the impedance is fine, right, because it's 0, there's no resistance there, and then we would start stimulation.
So the right way would be to plug into an electrode.
Right, yeah, exactly. So now we're ready to stimulate. Here's the session code I've entered, right? So we're in research mode, so there's nothing secret. You know what's going on. It lasts 40 minutes, it's idle, and it kind of keeps on checking the impedance. The impedance is fine. The button is now solid blue, and if you can please now press the blue button, because I need to pretend to be ahead here with my other hand. You just have to push it all the way in. It's like an elevator button. Yeah. So now it's stimulating. So now it's passing the current, and it is in real time via the Bluetooth streaming the measured current and voltage, which goes into an encrypted file on the tablet.
Okay.
Right, and if the electrode were to fall off, it would start screaming and say impedance is no good, it's red and blue blinking here. I would reconnect it and say let me check again. It goes like, okay, you're good. You're going back to the session, and see, and it remembers where it was last, and you continue there by hitting the button again. So this is research mode where you manually configure everything about stimulation.
And on the study mode, you gotta pick a study file.
Yes, so that's different. So let's quickly talk about, so I guess we can cancel out of here, yep. So in research mode, and this might be the part, yeah, we just have to connect again. The way it goes is like it disconnects each time that there's a fresh start. That's not ideal, but that's what it is. So in research mode, what the change I would like you to make is, you know, here we can pick between DC and AC, and here are the parameters. There would be another option, which is like, I want my custom waveform, right? So then lots of this stuff is gone because this describes the waveform, right? But the waveform is actually in the file. So you say, I want a custom waveform, and you would hit the button and you would see the menu, and you select the custom waveform. And then instead of sending to the stimulator all these parameters, it would send the waveform.
Mm-hmm.
Now the onboard memory here is limited, so the way how the custom waveform works, and I think you've seen this in the documentation, it's like a 2-second fragment. You send that, there's just a few bytes, you send it here, and then essentially it will, because all the stimulation waveforms are rhythmic, so it just keeps on repeating this for the duration you specify.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the app interface side for the research mode. Pretty much here, you know.
Is this a native app again? I don't remember.
Sorry.
Is that a native app?
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a native
It
Android
means
app.
it was built on Android,
Yes.
not a web. Okay.
Yeah, it is built on direct on Android. Yeah. So that's one step, right? With that, when I have that, I can do custom waveforms, but I would know that it's a custom waveform, so it's not a double-blind study, right? For study, the device is operated in a different way. For study, it works a little bit different because essentially you here choose one of your study files. And the study files have now all the information about how to stimulate. It's essentially a table where the first column for every row is a code. It's just like a random number we make up.
Yeah,
and then the other columns have specific meanings, right? Essentially the same parameters as we manually entered. It says, is it AC or is it DC? How long? What's the amplitude and all that? And the reason why it's built this way is we give our study personnel just these codes, and they enter the code, and they have no idea what's going on, and that's the entire idea, right? They don't know whether someone gets a real simulation, sine wave, something.
Mm-hmm.
So you select the study file here, and of course I don't remember any codes. Maybe I have a code that so here you would now enter one of these numbers in that file, and I can see if I have one for this. Let's see. I think this might be one. So the study coordinator would just be told use 455320 on this patient, and they don't know what it is. They enter that. Okay, this is not the right one. Let's go back to another study. Okay, we would have to go to the study file. I don't. This code is for a different study file, so I don't know what this study file says. We could go and look at it, but anyways, you're entering the code, and then afterwards you go directly to the screen where it's like start stop, and you don't see the parameters, right? So for the study mode, we would have to essentially inside that study file where all the information is, we would have to go and in there say for this code, go and use that custom waveform file.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's it.
So one study file could have more than one code?
Yes.
So one study file could have more than one parameters for the same study?
Yeah, so essentially you could, that's kind of the strength of this device. let's say, so right now, where we just have AC and DC, in the study file, let's say there are 20 codes, and maybe my study is that I will get 20 patients in, and everyone gets something different, right? So one would get 1 hertz, one would get 2 hertz, one would get 3 hertz. Now with the custom waveform, it should be the same thing. If I want to upload 20 custom waveforms here, right? I could say, for just like for every code, I put the file name there, and so then everyone would get different stuff. So in essence, as it is now, for every code, there are different conditions, and once you enter that code, that's what gets communicated to the device what it should do, right?
Okay. Got it.
Simple, isn't it?
Yes. Kind of. It's not complex, but it's not easy.
No,
No.
nothing good in life is easy.
Yes.
Yeah. It becomes easy once you learn.
Right. Yeah.
Anything-
Well, once you master it, then it's
Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, go on.
No.
Okay. So
I was
maybe
just
let me just draw on the board. Maybe that we can kind of have just a good summary, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'll draw it for you, so you have.
Do you mind if I step on your
No, please,
chair? I want to
please,
try that
no.
out
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's interesting.
This is custom made by a woodworker in Switzerland, actually. And the guy developed an entire book of exercise around it, because by standing on this, you're strengthening those
Your
small
core?
muscles, on the core, between the vertebrae that with regular exercise you don't strengthen, and it has a big impact on your long-term health.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I should get one of them.
Yeah.
You know what? I got here. He was standing with 1 feet. I barely can stand with it.
It's a matter of
How long
practice.
have it been? Yeah, sure.
So the app works in fundamentally there are 2 different ways how to use the device. Let's agree on that this doesn't work. Let's agree on we're gonna call one research mode and the other one study mode. When you start the device, you get the app you get here, right? So this is default. This one you go by clicking the option button, right, and choosing research mode.
Both are always available for everybody.
Both are available,
Okay.
yeah. The big difference here is the idea of a study is it's like taking a sugar pill and you don't know whether it's a sugar pill or a
Yeah.
real pill. This is double blind or secret, right? And this is open. Right. So technically it's called double blind because I'm blind, I don't know what I'm doing, and the patient is blind, and the patient doesn't know what's happening to him or her, right? What we currently have, both, so here you get a screen with all the options, right? Here you have the parameters on the screen, right, where you choose DC. So currently we have, do you want DC stimulation or AC, right, flat, and so on, amplitude, duration, and all this stuff. And here the way it works is you go to the study file, and first column is code, and code is whatever number you want it to be, and then here you have parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3, right? So now for every code I can say, let's say here it's whether it's AC or DC, here it would be amplitude, and so on, right? And you've seen study files. So that's what faces the user. So for the custom waveform, we have the custom waveform or a segment of the custom waveform in a file. Here you would just say, okay, DC AC, new option. I'm gonna, load that file with custom waveform. Here, essentially, it would say, well, you know what? These parameters, there might be essentially like an extra. Either an extra option here, maybe an extra column, right? Which is custom, yes, no, maybe a flag, and another one, the actual custom waveform file, right? So it'd say, okay, here's a 1 because I want the custom one. If it's a 0, just do as you've done before. If it's a 1, then here is my custom waveform file, right? And we would just have these extra columns here. And then you could have, for all the codes in the study, maybe all the participants are getting the same thing, so you'd have the same file name, or maybe you'd have different file names.
Okay.
That's it.
So it's one code for each participant,
Right.
or you could use the same code for multiple participants.
I could use the code for multiple participants, but
groups?
that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be. I don't think there's anything built in which says like if you use this code, you can't use it again. But typically when we do studies, we don't use the same code because even if I don't know what it stands for, I know you and you got the same thing, right? So then I know already something about what we've done that's not fully blind. So the way we typically use it is we use every code once on a person. Now, if it's a treatment paradigm where you come in every day for 5 days, you would always get the same code. Because we know whatever treatment you're getting, fake, real, custom, something, it's going to be the same thing for those 5 days. But that level of integration over multiple days and whether codes can or should be reused or not, you don't have to worry about, right? For now, the only goal is that I can essentially have this enhanced study file where I can put these names in, and if the flag is set that I want the given file, that it goes and moves this file to the device. And then the device firmware, as you've seen from the interface, knows what to do with that waveform.
Okay, I understand I think I got everything for the workflow, how it works, and that's it.
Right.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's easier than I thought. Thought you would be spending more.
And in the process of testing it,
Yes.
and I'm going to write the code that will add the parameters and put the custom waveform files. And how can I will send the information to the device.
Right.
It will make the stimulation. How can I assure that the device is making the right stimulation as the custom file is sent to it? How can I, does the device make any output of the stimulation?
Yes, it saves it in a file.
All right.
So it measures as you run the stimulation. It measures the stimulation waveform, both current and voltage, right? So current is what you specify, and voltage depends on how big resistor you have, right? So it puts that in an encrypted file, and it ends up on the tablet. And we have like this little really bare bones decrypt tool.
Inside the app already.
Yeah, so it gets streamed. It gets streamed. It's essentially the waveform as it's measured gets streamed back in real time.
Okay.
Back into the tablet. So you have an encrypted waveform. We have this really simple, very ugly decrypt utility, which one day I'll pay you to make nicer. But it's simple. It's probably 10 lines of code. I don't know. So we put the file in there, and it's just encrypted that no curious research personnel can go and look whether you get the real treatment or not, right? And then it's just a CSV file.
Okay.
And we load it into Excel, and we plot the waveforms, and you can
I can make the check on this.
You can check it, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the ultimate final check is to electrically measure it here, right? Because the sampling rate of the waveform internally is not that high. I think it's like 200 hertz or something. So the ultimate final check before we sell a device is we attach equipment here to measure the real electric current that comes out of the device. But I think for troubleshooting and testing, we can just give you a custom waveform which is slow enough that you see whether it's the right thing or not from the encrypted files.
Okay. I think that most of those information are in the documentation.
I hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen you had a prototype of the form with the new parameters, and maybe those.
Yeah. Maybe we can look at the documentation that we sent you together, because maybe we have, okay, let me just draw this again. So you would have your code, and then here you would have custom, and then your next column would be waveform file name, right? This would be your file with the custom waveform. So then I have another code for another patient, whatever else. I would say, well, I also want custom. But now please, here's waveform 1, here's going to be waveform 2.
Okay.
Right. And if those files are available, then good, right? And maybe you're going to have 100 codes and 100 different files, and it just knows which one to load in.
And this is what you want, not what is there.
I want this.
Okay.
Yeah. And what is there, I think, is none of this, right? It just says custom. And then there's one custom waveform,
Mm-hmm.
and it uses that, and we're done. But I don't want that. I want more flexibility. I want this.
I understand now.
Who created the documentation? You or
student.
the student?
Student.
Okay.
This is a draft which I sent you to figure out, to make draft up a quote. But this is important. It's clicking with
And
me now.
maybe you could add the part where you can undo the encryption to check for the stimulation saved, study saved, because I need to make a test,
Yes. I'll give you that. Yes. Yeah.
because I don't see the section on this documentation.
No. Let's see here. Okay.